Our episode begins with Shin asking his friends why they are wearing such clothes. Shiny explains that since elves attract a lot of attention, they decided to blend in by disguising themselves as monsters. She adds that these artificial ears serve the same function as real ones once worn and are claimed to be for cosplay purposes, having the ability to conceal the characteristics of a species. Shin thinks to himself that he never expected a feature designed purely for fun to be so useful. Shiny then asks him what he thinks of her ears, and he tells her they are great. They then decide to go see Sched. Shiny leaves, and Tiara is puzzled by Shiny's behavior, as is Shin, who did not expect to see Sched here, given that Kilmon is an ally of Lafarned. Among those at the funeral was the High Dragoneer Sched, who was previously a supporting character for him. The scene then shifts to Shin, Shiny, and Tiara as they arrive at the castle and enter. Shin asks Shiny if Sched is a king like Gerard, to which Shiny replies no. Despite being the first emperor of the Dragon Empire Kilmont, he severed ties with the imperial family. He has been living a comfortable life since Kilmont was established. The second and current emperor was supposed to be the first, but he was injured during the country's founding, so Sched became his substitute. They then arrive at Schwed's room and sit inside waiting for him. When Sched enters, Shin begins talking to him, but Sched bows before Shin, expressing his pleasure at his visit and stating that he will serve him once more and be the spear that pierces his enemies. Shin is surprised and asks him to dispense with formalities. Shiny tells Sched that this is Shin's wish, so it's fine to drop the formalities. Sched is surprised that they do not call Shin my lord, but simply Shin. He then asks Shiny why she looks this way, and she explains that she did it to suit Shin's taste. Shin smiles and asks her not to give Sched any wrong ideas about them. Everyone then sits down to drink and talk about Gerard's death. Shin tells him that Gerard was a warrior to the end. Sched asks Shin what he intends to do, and Shin replies that he has researched as much as possible in the libraries here and will go to the sacred place again. Sched tells him that he will return to Kilmont and join him later, and they can use telepathy to stay in touch. Shin agrees, gets up to leave, and then suddenly stops, saying he remembered something. Then Shin uses his magic to reveal a magnificent weapon, telling Sched that this is his special weapon called Banajizuki. Sched is extremely surprised, takes the weapon, and thanks Shin for it. He then remarks that the weapon is even stronger than Nagizuki. Shin explains that he has repaired Gerard's equipment and made it stronger, increasing its power fivefold. The scene shifts to Shin and the girls at the guild, where Shin tells them he wants to raise his adventurer rank to C. He takes a paper from the wall and says that this will do. The mission on the paper is to kill goblins, and they can do it as a day trip. Kuri asks if she can join them and says that when she returns, she will handle her other duties. She is investigating Ralua Forest to ensure it is regrowing properly. Shin asks if she minds if he accompanies her, as he was part of the battle and wants to check on it as well. Kuri agrees. The scene transitions to the forest, where we see Shin and the girls hiding behind trees, watching the goblins. Shin tells them that each one of them will kill a goblin, and the girls agree, starting the fight. Each of them kills one of the large goblins, working hard. After a few minutes, the task is complete, and they have all won. They stand on top of the hill, having accomplished something great, but they have created a mess in the process. They decide to clean up the area and the mess they made. While checking everything in the area, they notice any unusual growth of plants and make sure to uproot them. After finally finishing their work, they return to the guild. Shin approaches the receptionist and tells her that they have completed the mission and asks if she can verify it. She says all right, but there is a message for you. She hands him a paper and tells him it is from Barlicus, the guild leader of this branch. Shin recalls him, and the message states that he has been summoned by the Berry-like Palace and should go there as soon as possible, though he does not know what they want from him. Then, Shin is surprised as he remembers something related to the matter and tells them that he should probably take care of this before working on his rank. Shini responds, all right, I will join you, and everyone else tells him they will join him too. However, Kuri says, I wish I could join you, but I cannot leave the country. Shin reassures her, it's okay, my dear, but there is something I want to give to Wolfgang. Can you tell me when he will be available? This man, Wolfgang, is her father and the Night Fang. Kuri goes to her father and tells him that Shin wishes to speak with him. He tells her to let him in, and Shin enters. Shin apologizes for the sudden visit, but explains that he needs to go to Berelict immediately. He then says, "I thought of giving you these arms before I leave." Wolf is very surprised, because these are the Death Moon gloves that belong to the late Gerard. Shin explains that he has changed the ownership name, and now Wolfgang can transfer their ownership to anyone he wants. Wolf says he heard they were destroyed in their last battle, but Shin tells him that since he made the gloves, repairing them was easy. Additionally, Gerard had asked him to give them to Wolfgang after the battle. Shin asks Wolf to try them on, and when he does, he is astonished by their immense power. His hands start to glow with great strength. He salutes Shin as the scene transitions to the next morning, where Shin and his companions are saying goodbye to Wolf and his daughter. They are leaving, but Shin decides to use teleportation since the journey by carriage would take too long. He takes out a crystal that will transport them faster than the speed of light. They find themselves in a new place, and using the map, Shin realizes that some people are watching them. He is glad he used the stealth skill, and Shini suggests maybe they think the Moon Shrine will reappear in this area. People must have forgotten long ago that it can be moved. They start talking among themselves, with some accusing Shin of being arrogant and impulsive. Shin gets very angry and tells them, "Silence all of you, or I will expel you from this place." The scene shifts to the guild, where two guild girls welcome him, saying they haven't seen him in a long time. Shin tells them, "All right, ladies, I've been summoned by the guild leader." They reply, "One moment, sir. We will inform him of your arrival now." Shin asks Salisa about the guild leader's summons. Celica responds that they were not informed about everything, but she expected Shin to be summoned soon because he wasn't an ordinary adventurer, always traveling with beautiful women. Shin replies that they also have male acquaintances. Celica is surprised, as she had never seen him talk to a man before. Shin mentions that he has dealt with William before, which astonishes Celica. Shin continues, explaining that while it wasn't an official mission, he did work with him before. Shin then notices that everyone suddenly became silent and asks Celica about it. She explains that people were surprised to hear he worked with William because William doesn't usually team up with anyone and is said to have S-rank combat strength. Many rumors about him make people find it difficult to approach him. Shin replies that William can indeed be misunderstood, but he is an exceptional person. The scene then transitions to Shin entering the guild leader's room. The guild leader welcomes him and thanks him for coming sooner than expected, though he would have come anyway. The guild leader introduces him to the wizard Arid, who evaluates gemstones for the guild and had assessed the Scalvus gem that Shin brought. The guild leader then continues, saying that the palace has summoned Shin for something. But before discussing anything further, the wizard Arid has a question. He asks if Shin knows about a large white sword that flew into the palace and crashed into the second princess of Berelic's bedroom, causing a great commotion. Shin responds that he had heard something about it and asks if anyone was hurt. Arid replies that the issue is the sword itself, as its elemental magic and core materials are incredibly remarkable and seem similar to the royal sword of the kingdom. Arid explains that the Scalvus gem Shin defeated contained very powerful magical energy and was of a very high level. Shin becomes a bit anxious and asks how they knew he was involved. Arid tells him that someone was investigating what happened and discovered the gem. As its appraiser, Arid was asked to evaluate the sword as well. There were traces of different magical energy in the sword, which matched the magical energy of the gem. Shin is astonished, comparing it to a fantasy version of DNA analysis. Arid continues, saying they followed the trail from there. When they discovered who brought the gem, Shin was summoned. Given the circumstances, the guild couldn't keep his secret and couldn't deceive the investigators. The guild leader says that fortunately Shin had a letter of recommendation from the Moon Shrine, preventing the situation from escalating further. Then the guild leader gets to the point. The second princess, Ryan, summoned Shin herself because this incident piqued her interest in him. Shin worries about being blamed for potentially endangering her, but the guild leader reassures him that he won't be punished. The princess had killed Scalvus before, and her experience convinced everyone that Shin had no choice but to use all his strength against it. Shin still wonders what the princess wants from him, but the guild leader has no answer, pointing out that politicians are crafty creatures. After the conversation ends, Shin returns to his friends and tells them what happened. They are astonished. He says he didn't do this on purpose, but he feels they might be pressuring him to work with them or marry the princess, as it is said that the country's power aligns with its high-ranking chosen ones. Shin says they will try hard to recruit him and doubts there will be any issues if he refuses their offers. She adds that they would suffer a great loss if he left, given they are members of his team, which should be a strong enough reason to refuse. Shin replies that if they want to marry him off, and he refuses without a good reason, it will only cause more problems. Shiny suggested that Shin could tell them that she is his fiancée, and he could also say that he is engaged to Tiara. Yuzuhara chimed in, saying, "I also want to be Shin's fiancée." Shin responded, "This will ruin me socially. We're just pretending. It's all an act and nothing real." The scene then transitions to the princess's palace, where Shin mentions that he has been summoned by the second princess. The guard speaks, "We were expecting you. I will call an escort for you." Then a man named Gadras appears, saying, "The princess asked me to accompany you. I will be your escort." Shin uses his appraisal skill on Gadras and finds out that his level is 188, realizing they have sent one of the kingdom's strongest men to meet him. They reach the princess's chamber, and the princess speaks to him, "I am the second princess of this kingdom. It's a pleasure to meet you." Shin asks her, "May I know the reason for my summons?" She responds, "I am sure Barlux gave you an idea about it. It's about the Scalvus." She opens a chest containing a very large sword. She then asks Shin, "Do you recognize this?" He replies, "It's the sword that Scalvus carried. It's very powerful. It destroyed my weapon during the battle." The princess explains that it's different because most adventurers like Shin are distinguished when they are chosen. When they decide someone is very strong, they invite them here. Some use this opportunity to plan assassinations. We suspected you might be one of them, but it seems there is no fear from you. Shin responds, "I don't recall saying anything that might dispel these suspicions." The princess tells him, "You didn't need to say anything. You acted on your instincts and you revealed your true self. I have a skill called intuition, and my intuition has never been wrong." Gadras adds, "The most decisive factor was the recommendation letter from the Moon Shrine." The princess continues, "Shiny wouldn't give a recommendation to someone who might be plotting an assassination. It was like a final test. To be honest with you, I want you to fight me." After that, we see an old man with a ghostly figure appearing behind him. When the old man sees the ghost, he is very frightened. And thus, today's episode of this anime concludes. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates. For